Stoic detachment that makes you untouchable. Let's begin. You reach out in pain. They retreat into silence. You try to understand. They vanish without a word. You bleed emotionally. They behave as if nothing ever happened. This isn't just coldness. It's a weapon. When a narcissist hurts you, the very next move isn't to apologize. It's to disappear to punish you, not with conflict, but with absence. And the silence isn't peace. It's psychological warfare. You see, this pattern is not random. It's not a mood swing. It's a calculated maneuver. And here's why narcissists operate through power, not connection. And power thrives in imbalance. When they hurt you, they've created an emotional spike, a wound. Then they go silent, knowing full well your mind will try to close the loop. We're wired for closure, for resolution. We want to understand the rupture, make sense of what just happened. We reach out for explanation, hoping for a repair, or at least recognition. But for the narcissist, this is when the real game begins. Because their silence doesn't mean they don't know what they did. It means they do know, and they know it worked. Silence gives them control. They've stripped you of the ability to ask, to argue, to heal, and left you spiraling in mental chaos. You question your memory, your worth, your sanity. You replay the events. You overthink every word. And while you're doing all that, they do nothing. Because in their mind, they've already won. Stoic insight, this isn't confusion, it's strategy. The Stoics taught us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. The narcissist's silence is not yours to fix. It is not a signal of your inadequacy. It is a reflection of their fragility. In truth, their silence is an act of emotional domination. It's not absence, it's presence by force. A quiet message that says, "I will only see you when you are compliant. Your pain doesn't deserve my attention. I decide when you are real and when you are invisible." That's not distance. That's psychological erasure. And here's where many people get trapped. They mistake the silence as a call to action. They reach out. They explain. They apologize for hurting, even when they were the ones hurt. And this, to the narcissist, is victory. You're dancing to their rhythm, chasing their recognition, handing over your emotional autonomy on a silver platter. Emotional intelligence. Don't feed the silence to break the spell. You need to develop what the Stoics called apatheia, not emotional numbness, but emotional sovereignty. A deep clarity that tells you, I do not need their words to know my worth. I do not require their approval to feel real. Their silence is not a mirror of who I am. It's a symptom of who they are. When someone hurts you and then ignores you, they're not avoiding drama, they're avoiding accountability. And a person who flees responsibility is not emotionally safe. They're not mature. They're not strong. They are deeply fragile, terrified of being exposed, terrified of looking inward, terrified of confronting their own impact. True strength isn't found in disappearing after damage. It's found in standing still and facing truth. And so, when the narcissist ghosts you after causing harm, the most dangerous response for them is not your anger, not your retaliation, not your plea. It's your silence, but not the silence of fear. The silence of clarity, the kind of silence that says, "You no longer live in my emotional world. You are not worthy of my energy or my attention. I've outgrown the need to be seen by someone who only sees themselves." What Stoicism demands of you now? Let's be honest, detaching isn't easy. It's tempting to explain yourself, to reach out just one more time, to believe you can fix what was never mutual to begin with. But as Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You don't need closure from someone who thrives on leaving you open and bleeding. You don't need to chase peace from someone who manufactures chaos. You need to turn inward, to return to your core, to reclaim the parts of you that were handed over in desperation. Because here's the truth. No narcissist wants you to realize, the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop caring about their silence, they lose everything. Their entire game depends on your emotional response. Remove that, and they're left with nothing but the mirror they've been avoiding all along. Silence is supposed to bring peace, but in the hands of a narcissist, it becomes a weapon more brutal than shouting because it cuts without leaving a mark. When they ignore you after hurting you, it's not to reflect, not to cool down, not to process. It's to dominate. It's to make you suffer while they do nothing. And that's what makes it so effective. A raised voice. You can resist, but silence slips into your mind, into your heart, and makes you question your very reality. The narcissist knows this. They've weaponized absence into a form of control, and they use it not to disappear but to condition you. This isn't just immaturity, it's behavioral conditioning. Think about how a dog is trained. Bad behavior is punished with coldness. Obedience is rewarded with attention. Now imagine that tactic in a relationship. When you disagree, express hurt, or assert your dignity, the narcissist withdraws. They don't argue. They vanish. They leave your emotional messages on read, your pain unanswered, your voice echoing in silence. Why? Because they want to teach you something. This is what happens when you resist me. You'll get me back only when you're compliant again. It's not an argument. It's not a conversation. It's correction. And over time, it works not because it's fair, but because it taps into your deepest instincts. As human beings, we are social creatures. Rejection hurts. Silence feels like exile, and the narcissist knows that if they ignore you long enough, you'll likely cave, not because you believe you were wrong, but because the emotional isolation becomes unbearable. The Stoic view silence is not always noble. We often associate silence with maturity, with wisdom, with restraint. But Stoicism doesn't praise silence for silence's sake. It praises silence with intention, silence that comes from clarity, not manipulation. As Epictetus taught, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. And here's where judgment is essential. Not all silence is virtuous. When a narcissist falls into silence after hurting you, it is not virtue. It is cowardice wrapped in control. It's not needing space. It's a punishment designed to disorient you, to train you into chasing, apologizing, and shrinking yourself to fit their fragile ego. And the more you break that silence, the more power you give them. Real example, the trap of maybe they just need time. Let's get practical. You confront them about something that hurt you. They say nothing. Days go by. They ghost you. You think, maybe I said it wrong. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I should have waited. Softened my tone. Said it differently. Now pause. Who is doing the emotional labor? Who is processing the damage? Questioning their actions? Trying to fix the rupture? You are, while they, the person who caused the harm, do absolutely nothing. And this is where emotional intelligence becomes your shield. Because someone who truly values you would never weaponize your pain to reinforce their power. They wouldn't go silent after hurting you. They'd speak. They'd reflect. They'd stay. The psychological mechanism behind the silence. What's even more sinister is how subtle this tactic is. There's no shouting, no name-calling, no physical action, just nothing. And nothing is hard to prove, hard to explain, hard to defend against. You tell a friend, they're ignoring me. They say, maybe they're busy, maybe give them time. But they don't see the full story, the pattern, the cycle, the deliberate timing of that silence after harm. This is emotional exile. And the longer it goes on, the more you start to believe you deserve it. You shrink. You hesitate. You walk on eggshells to avoid triggering the next silence. You stop being yourself. And that's exactly what the narcissist wants. Not love, not partnership, but obedience. The Stoic reversal, from obedience to inner authority. So how do you reclaim power? You stop taking their silence as a reflection of your failure. You stop breaking the silence just to soothe the discomfort they created. You stop thinking their coldness is your cue to act. And you begin to stand still. You realize, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Don't match their silence with fear. Match it with clarity. Match it with strength. Match it with a decision. If your silence is meant to control me, then I choose not to play. Your emotional pain is not their feedback loop. Here's the final truth. Every time you beg for closure, every time you send that final message, every time you twist yourself to be more acceptable, you give the narcissist what they crave: control through your pain. But when you stop responding not with bitterness, but with calm certainty, they lose that control. They're not used to that. They don't know how to process someone who doesn't need their recognition to feel whole. They don't know how to manipulate someone who has chosen inner peace over external approval. And that's the moment they realize their silence no longer works. Because you've chosen something more powerful. Emotional intelligence, psychological boundaries, self-respect. At first, it feels like confusion. You replay the moment, the silence, the hurt. You try to make sense of it all. You think, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I misunderstood, maybe I'm too sensitive, but you're not confused. You're being conditioned. Deliberately, systematically. This isn't random emotional chaos. It's a cycle. And the longer you stay in it, the more your emotional compass is reprogrammed to work against you. From pain to pursuit, the loop of emotional dependency. Here's the pattern, see if it feels familiar. 1. They hurt you. 2. They go silent. 3. You spiral. 4. You blame yourself. 5. You chase them not for love, but for relief. You don't even want them back because you trust them. You want them back because your nervous system can't handle the silence. You crave resolution not because it brings you peace, but because it stops the panic. That's not love. That's trauma bonding. And here's what makes it so dangerous. It feels like your fault. But it's by design. Intermittent reinforcement, the narcissist's favorite game in psychology. There's a term called intermittent reinforcement, where rewards are given unpredictably. Not all the time, just enough to keep you hooked. Think about a slot machine. You pull the lever, you lose. Again, and again, and again. Then, jackpot. It floods your brain with dopamine, and even though the losses outweigh the wins, you keep playing. Because now, you're not chasing reward, you're addicted to hope. That's exactly how the narcissist operates. Some days they're charming, affectionate, warm. Other days, they're distant, cruel, or simply gone. There's no logic, no rhythm, no predictability. And so you cling harder. You try to decode their mood, their silence, their cold eyes. You adjust your behavior, your tone, your truth, hoping to earn the good version of them again. But that good version is a trap, a bait, a manipulation tactic. And every time you fall for it, you reinforce the system. Emotional intelligence isn't about understanding them. It's about understanding the pattern. Let's be clear. You don't need to understand why they're doing this. You already do. They crave control, not connection. What you need to understand is why you're staying in the cycle. And that requires emotional intelligence, not just to analyze them, but to observe yourself. Ask, why do I feel responsible for their silence? Why do I feel like I need to fix something I didn't break? Why do I equate pain with love and confusion with chemistry? You're not weak. You're human. And if you grew up in an environment where love had to be earned through pleasing, appeasing, or performing, then this toxic dynamic doesn't feel foreign. It feels familiar. The Stoic truth familiar isn't the same as right. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. But when you're being conditioned by a narcissist, your sense of right gets distorted. You start thinking it's right to chase, to explain, to seek peace even when the other person is playing a game. But let's be brutally honest. You can't win a game where the rules change every time you speak. That's not a relationship. It's emotional roulette. And the only way to win is to stop playing. Real-life reflection, from confusion to clarity. Let's look at an example. Someone we'll call Maya was in a relationship where her partner constantly gave her the silent treatment after every disagreement. At first, she thought he just needed space. Then she thought maybe she was too demanding. Then she started keeping her opinions to herself, just to keep the peace. But the more silent he became, the smaller she felt. She realized she was doing all the emotional work, while he maintained control by doing nothing. And then one day, she stopped. She didn't chase. She didn't explain. She just paused and noticed And what she saw was the pattern, not just the pain. She saw the conditioning. That's when everything changed. Detachment begins with recognition. The moment you can say out loud, "This isn't confusion. This is control," is the moment you start to reclaim your mind. It doesn't mean the pain ends instantly, but it means the spell is broken. You stop playing detective. You stop chasing ghosts. You stop begging for crumbs. And you start watching instead of reacting. Because when you understand the game, you stop being the pawn. Choose discipline over dopamine. The most dangerous part of narcissistic conditioning is that it rewards you with temporary highs, a kind text, a moment of warmth, a sudden reappearance after weeks of silence. But those are breadcrumbs. You're starving, and they're feeding you sugar. Stoicism teaches us that peace doesn't come from external rewards. It comes from internal order, from choosing dignity over dependency, clarity over chaos, discipline over dopamine. And that's the real turning point. You don't escape the cycle by confronting the narcissist. You escape it by confronting yourself. In most relationships, absence weakens connection in a healthy dynamic. If someone you care about pulls away without a word, it creates concern, reflection, or even repair. But with a narcissist, silence doesn't mean detachment. It means dominance. Their absence is not neutral. It's a move, a weapon. And the cruel irony is, the less they say, the more you suffer. The more they ignore, the more you analyze, the more they disappear, the more power they gain. This isn't miscommunication. It's emotional colonization. They don't need to win the argument, they just need you to keep replaying it. When someone hurts you and goes silent, your instinct is to find meaning. We are creatures of narrative. We need storylines to feel safe. So you begin the search. Did I say too much? Was I too needy? Are they just overwhelmed? This is the beginning of self-erasure. You start writing their silence into a script where you are the cause and they are the misunderstood character. But here's the Stoic truth. If their silence creates confusion rather than peace, it is not distance. It is domination. You're being trained to interpret absence as your failure, and that's how they stay in control without lifting a single finger. The game emotional absence as behavioral correction. Let's name it clearly. Their silence is punishment. You stood up for yourself. You called out their manipulation. You asked for clarity. Now you're being sent to the emotional corner. No response. No recognition. No reality check. And here's the twist. They don't even need to say you were wrong. Their disappearance does all the work. It says, "You don't deserve my voice. You crossed a line. And now I'll vanish until you regret it. You exist on my terms, and right now, I've chosen to erase you, and unless you've developed emotional intelligence and psychological boundaries, your reaction plays right into the script. You over-apologize. You beg for reconciliation. You soften your truth. You abandon yourself. All so you can restore the connection that's been ripped away. But what you're restoring isn't connection. It's control. The absence feeds them because it hurts you. This is the darkest part of the pattern. The narcissist's silence is not passive, it's fuel. Because every time you recheck your phone, draft a message you never send, cry over their indifference, they know they still matter. They're not detached. They're observing from a distance, silently feeding on the energy of your confusion. Your pain equals their proof of significance, and the more you suffer in their absence, the more powerful they feel. Why the narcissist disappears instead of confronting you. Here's what most people miss. A narcissist doesn't go silent because they're mature. They go silent because they're fragile. To confront the damage they've caused would mean facing their own imperfections, their guilt, their accountability, their humanity. But that's a price they refuse to pay. Because at the core of narcissism is a fragile ego masquerading as invincibility and silence. Silence protects the mask. By avoiding confrontation, they avoid exposure. By ignoring your pain, they preserve their illusion of superiority. So instead of showing strength by leaning in, they show weakness disguised as distance. Healthy silence versus narcissistic silence. Let's make an important distinction. Not all silence is harmful. Sometimes silence means reflection. Sometimes it means respect. Sometimes it's the wise choice when emotions are high. But with narcissists, silence is not resolution, it's erasure. A declaration that you no longer exist unless they decide otherwise. So how do you know the difference? Ask yourself this: does their silence bring peace or provoke panic? If it's the latter, it's not space. It's strategy. From Stoic clarity, stop translating their silence into your self-worth. You do not need to decode their absence. You need to observe it without personalizing it. You don't need to guess their feelings. You need to anchor in your own. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't stop them from disappearing, but you can stop believing their disappearance defines your value. You can't make them speak, but you can make yourself heard in your own mind. That's where power lives. In summary, a narcissist turns absence into power through emotional confusion, strategic silence, passive punishment, psychological distance. But that power is rented, space in your mind. And you can evict them the moment you realize their silence says nothing about who I am, only who they choose to be. There's a moment in every toxic dynamic that cuts deeper than any insult, any argument, any betrayal. It's not the yelling, not the gaslighting, not even the emotional manipulation. It's the silence that follows. But not just any silence. This is the kind that comes after they've hurt you and pretend nothing happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, not even eye contact. It's as if you never existed, and that is exactly the point. This isn't withdrawal. It's emotional erasure. When the narcissist goes silent, they don't just leave the room. They leave your reality and take you out of theirs. No explanation, no closure, no goodbye. They weaponize silence to create psychological exile, a void so painful it makes you question your entire self-worth. And while you're spiraling in confusion and shame, they're not reflecting, they're not healing. They're simply watching, because to them, your confusion is confirmation. Confirmation that they still control how you feel. confirmation that you're still emotionally tethered, and most importantly, that they are still central in your mind. It's not absence. It's control without touch. This is what makes narcissistic silence so insidious. It hurts more than shouting because it leaves you nowhere to place the pain. No confrontation means no clarity. No words means no closure. No response means no relief. You're left to wage war with your own thoughts, turning every interaction into self-blame. Was I too much? Did I overreact? Maybe I should have just let it go. This is not you thinking clearly. This is you doing their emotional labor, tying yourself in knots to make sense of someone else's avoidance. Emotional intelligence reveals the truth. Silence is strategy, not confusion. When someone ignores you after hurting you, it's easy to believe they're just processing or need space. But here's what emotional intelligence teaches us. People who are emotionally mature don't ghost accountability. They sit with discomfort. They own their mistakes. And above all, they don't disappear when it's time to repair. A narcissist doesn't go silent because they're deep. They go silent because they're shallow, too fragile to face themselves, too ego-driven to confront the chaos they created. Their silence isn't a pause. It's a performance with the goal of reinforcing one thing: power belongs to the one who cares less. And they want you to be the one who cares more. The psychological loop: pain, withdrawal, self-blame, pursuit. Let's decode the cycle. 1. They hurt you. 2. They go silent. 3. You internalize the pain. 4. You blame yourself. 5. You chase them. And just like that, they win. They've conditioned you to associate their silence with your failure. This is not a relationship dynamic. It's emotional programming. They vanish to reinforce the illusion that you're the one who broke it. And they're the one who gets to withhold repair. It's not love. It's a power game. And if you keep playing, you'll keep losing not just them, but yourself. Healthy boundaries destroy this power. The antidote isn't more communication. It's not pouring your heart out in one more text. It's not rewriting your message 7 times and wondering if your tone was too much. The antidote is psychological boundaries. You must train your mind to recognize. This silence is not mine to solve. Their withdrawal is not a reflection of my worth. It's a mirror of their cowardice. Your emotional intelligence must become your armor. You don't beg to be seen by someone who uses your pain as leverage. You don't plead for presence from someone who finds power in your panic. Clarity over chaos. Redefine what silence means. Here's what most victims never realize. You don't need their words to find your peace. You just need to stop believing that their silence holds meaning. When they go quiet, it doesn't mean you were wrong. You're unlovable. You need to fix something. It means they can't handle responsibility. They fear truth. They mistake control for connection. So stop asking, "Why aren't they talking to me?" and start asking, "Why am I tolerating this kind of relationship?" Inner peace begins where emotional games end. The moment you stop needing their voice to validate your worth, their silence loses all its power. Let them vanish. Let them avoid. Let them pretend. You return to yourself. You sit in your truth. You hold your dignity close like a sword forged through fire. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Don't let their silence stain you with shame. Let your clarity repaint your identity, one rooted in self-worth, inner peace, and mental strength. There's a cruel trick the mind plays when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, especially after they hurt you, and goes silent. Instead of seeing the silence for what it is, a deliberate act of control, you start interpreting it as a test of love. You wait, you worry, you obsess, and then the trap springs shut. The brain craves resolution. Narcissists deny it on purpose. Let's get brutally honest. Your brain is hardwired to complete emotional loops. It hates open-ended stories. It hates loose threads. It hates questions without answers. When someone hurts you and vanishes, that loop stays open. And instead of closing it with logic or clarity, your brain spirals deeper into obsession. Maybe they're going through something. Maybe if I give them time, they'll come back better. Maybe this means they actually care, and they're just afraid to show it. No, that's not emotional depth. That's emotional conditioning. They create confusion, and your need for meaning becomes their leverage. The confusion feels familiar because it's been programmed before. Here's a truth most people never dare to face. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where attention was inconsistent, where your feelings were minimized or dismissed, then this toxic dynamic won't feel foreign. It'll feel like home. That's what makes the narcissist's silence so dangerous. It doesn't just hurt you, it activates your past. Suddenly, you're not just reacting to them, you're reliving old wounds. And the worst part, you start chasing the very person who's punishing you, not because they've earned your love, but because your nervous system has confused punishment with intimacy. This is not devotion. It's trauma bonding. Let's name it clearly. You're not waiting out of love. You're stuck in a trauma loop. You confuse their absence with your failure. You believe that if you just say the right thing, just love them enough, they'll stop using silence as a weapon. But the more you try to fix it, the more they vanish. And the more they vanish, the more power they gain. This is not a story of two souls trying to find each other. It's a one-sided game of emotional puppeteering. And you're the one tangled in invisible strings. Silence is not maturity. It's manipulation. Some people like to romanticize this kind of withdrawal. Maybe they're a deep thinker. Maybe they just need time to process. But the truth, emotionally mature people don't disappear after causing harm. They lean in. They listen. They repair. The narcissist doesn't go silent to heal. They go silent to make you bleed emotionally and then watch from a safe distance. It's not introspection. It's emotional detachment used as a leash. They leave you hurting just enough to make sure you don't forget who has the power to withhold relief. The Stoic shift. Stop seeking love from emotional saboteurs. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the pivot point. You can't force someone to act with integrity, but you can stop confusing chaos with care. You can choose to redefine what love actually means. Love doesn't vanish when things get hard. Love doesn't weaponize silence. Love doesn't leave you questioning your worth. When you understand this, a new kind of emotional clarity emerges. You stop asking, why are they doing this? And start asking, why do I keep tolerating it? Self-worth isn't measured by who stays silent, it's measured by who you let go. Let's strip it down to the core. Silence after harm is not a sign of love. It's a test of how much self-worth you still have. And here's what the narcissist is really watching. They're not waiting for you to move on. They're waiting to see if you'll come back wounded, confused, apologetic, so they can reset the power imbalance. Your emotional dependence is their favorite supply, not because they love you, but because you still think they might. That's the real trap. Clarity ends the cycle, even when it hurts. It hurts to accept that someone you loved never truly loved you back. It hurts to stop chasing someone you once imagined a future with. But clarity, however painful, is better than the endless ache of manipulation. Because if silence is how they express their care, then solitude is where you find your peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from silence forced upon you, but the peace you choose when you stop letting someone else define your value through absence. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not the problem. You are simply done with the psychological trap, the one where silence poses as intimacy and emotional control wears the mask of love. And once you walk away from that illusion, you walk back into yourself, your truth, your clarity, your freedom. There's a dangerous misconception that many fall into when dealing with a narcissist's silence. You assume it says something about you, your failure, your emotional intensity, your mistakes, your weakness. But here's the truth. Their silence doesn't reveal your flaws. It exposes their limitations. Let's flip the mirror around. When someone goes silent after hurting you, when they vanish instead of owning their impact, what are they really showing you? It's not emotional restraint. It's not maturity. And it's certainly not self-awareness. It's avoidance. It's a refusal to be accountable. It's the inability to sit with guilt, to reflect with humility, to grow with integrity. In short, their silence isn't a reflection of your value. It's a mirror exposing their emotional incapacity. The Stoic principle, actions reveal character. Always. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Translation: people show you who they are through what they choose to do or refuse to do. A narcissist doesn't go silent because they've evolved. They go silent because they cannot face themselves. Silence is their escape route, a way to flee the battlefield they created and leave you with the emotional wreckage. If someone disappears every time the mirror gets too honest, they are not mature. They are fragile in disguise. Silence is not the absence of emotion, it's the absence of courage. It takes courage to say, "I was wrong. I hurt you. Let's talk about it." It takes emotional intelligence to stay in the room when discomfort rises, to confront the shadow, to choose truth over ego. But narcissists don't operate in the arena of courage. They operate in the realm of appearances, where truth is dangerous, and silence is the armor that keeps their illusion intact. They won't face what they did, because facing it would mean facing who they really are. And that's a war they are not equipped to fight. So, why does it still hurt so badly? Because you have emotional depth. Because you believe in resolution. Because you're willing to own your part. and you naturally expect others to do the same. But here's the catch. You're projecting your emotional maturity onto someone who's emotionally evasive. You assume they feel what you feel. They don't. You assume they process pain like you do. They don't. This is where the psychological fracture begins. You're waiting for accountability from someone who sees accountability as a threat. You're expecting dialogue from someone who uses silence as control. You're looking for closure in someone who feeds off your confusion. When silence is a weapon, presence is a choice. In healthy relationships, silence is used to reflect, to calm down, to avoid harm. But in narcissistic dynamics, silence is used to punish, to disorient, to destabilize. So let's make a clear distinction. Silence that comes with empathy is healing. Silence that comes with disregard is harm. And here's the Stoic perspective. You do not owe anyone your presence, especially not those who weaponize absence. Let their silence speak. Let it echo not in your worth, but in their cowardice. Your job isn't to break the silence. It's to understand what it means. The narcissist's silence is a message, but it's not the message you think. It's not "you messed up. You pushed me away. You need to change." It's "I don't have the tools to engage. I'd rather ghost than grow. I control by retreating." Once you decode this, something shifts inside you. You stop interpreting their absence as rejection and start seeing it as revelation. Not about who you are, but who they are. Self-worth isn't found in their return. It's found in your clarity. Let's be brutally honest. If someone can ignore your pain, walk away after harm, refuse to repair the damage they caused, they are not emotionally safe. And emotional safety is non-negotiable. Their silence should not make you question your worth. It should make you question your standards. What kind of people do you allow access to your heart? What kind of behavior do you still excuse? What kind of absence are you still romanticizing? Because the answer to those questions will determine whether you stay in the trap or walk out of it with your dignity intact. Final thought. You deserve presence that is earned, not withheld. Real relationships are built on mutual responsibility, mutual respect, mutual presence. Silence may be golden in wisdom, but in the hands of the emotionally manipulative, it's poison. So here's the truth. If their silence speaks louder than your pain, they were never listening in the first place. And once you realize that, you stop turning down your voice to match their silence. You rise, you walk, you rebuild, not because they deserve your absence, but because you deserve your peace. The chains of emotional manipulation are not made of iron. They're forged in confusion, guilt, and longing. You're not crazy for wanting closure. You're not weak for wanting connection. You're human. And that's exactly what narcissists exploit. Because the moment they hurt you and then go silent, they're not simply walking away. They're tightening the leash, initiating a cycle that's been rehearsed 1,000 times in their mind. And if you don't recognize the pattern, you'll stay stuck in it, while convincing yourself it's your job to fix it. Let's break the cycle down. Here's how it typically goes. 1. They hurt you, subtly or severely. A lie, a betrayal, a cut disguised as truth. 2. You react emotionally, vulnerably, sometimes even with tears or anger. 3. They withdraw, suddenly, without explanation, silence, distance, dismissal. 4. You spiral, you analyze, blame yourself, seek closure, chase their attention. 5. They return, not with accountability, but with charm, indifference, or emotional bait. 6. You forgive, not because you're naive, but because you crave peace, connection, clarity. 7. The cycle repeats. Each time you go through it, something in you shrinks. Your boundaries erode. Your self-worth bends. And the silence becomes a form of psychological punishment. Silence isn't just silence, it's a lesson you're being taught. Narcissists don't just go quiet. They train you to fear that quiet, to equate emotional absence with your failure, to believe that when they vanish, it's because you messed up. And so, the next time conflict brews, you silence yourself preemptively. You shrink. You censor. You abandon your truth to avoid being abandoned. That's not love. That's not growth. That's conditioning. And that's the trap. Why is it so hard to break? Because punishment becomes predictable, and in an emotionally volatile relationship, predictability feels like safety. It's easier to chase someone who disappears than to face the terrifying possibility that they never truly valued you to begin with. That realization is a knife to the soul, but it's also the key to freedom. Emotional intelligence is knowing when to walk away without explanation. It takes strength to confront someone, but it takes even more to walk away from someone who punishes you with silence, and to do so without waiting for closure. Because closure is their bait, and every time you bite, you re-enter the game. Stoicism teaches us freedom is the power to live as one wishes. Epictetus. Ask yourself, do you wish to live in confusion, in self-blame, in a loop that devours your peace, or do you want clarity, self-respect, inner peace? Then you must break the cycle by refusing to participate in it. How to break the cycle? Step by step 1. Recognize the pattern. Stop romanticizing their silence. See it for what it is: control, not confusion. 2. Reclaim your inner dialogue. Replace. What did I do wrong with? What part of me still tolerates this? 3. Set unbreakable boundaries, not walls of bitterness, but gates of wisdom. Boundaries that say, if your love comes with punishment, he won't accept it. 4. Detach with clarity, not coldness. This isn't revenge. This isn't emotional shutdown. This is self-mastery. This is walking away without a need to be understood. 5. Stop explaining yourself to the unwilling. The more you try to explain your pain to someone who weaponizes it, the deeper you sink into their illusion. Let your silence now be different, not the kind they use to control you, but the kind that protects your peace. What happens when you stop reacting? They'll panic. They'll escalate. They might reappear. They might hoover you with sweetness, guilt, or emotional bait. Don't be fooled. Their return isn't love. It's the cycle reloading. And if you fall for it, the spiral resumes. But if you stand firm, something shifts. Their silence no longer punishes you. It frees you, because now you know you are not afraid of distance. You are not addicted to confusion. You are no longer the one holding the weight of two people's emotional immaturity. Closing. This chapter breaking. The cycle doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in many small decisions. To choose peace over panic. To prioritize your mental clarity over their chaos. To finally believe you never deserved punishment for having a heart. And the day you stop dancing to their rhythm, the day you stop begging for validation from someone who thrives on your insecurity, is the day the cycle ends. Not because they changed, but because you did. They may withhold their presence, but you must not withhold your truth. Narcissists don't always control you with words. Often, they do it with silence. Not the kind born of peace or reflection, but the kind sharpened into a weapon. It's emotional distance, crafted with precision to trigger panic in your soul and obedience in your heart. But here's what they never expected: that you would stop seeing their distance as power and start seeing it as proof of their emotional incompetence, the illusion of control. When they disappear after hurting you, they're not just avoiding conflict, they're constructing a psychological trap. If I go quiet, they'll blame themselves. If I vanish, they'll beg me back. If I deny them clarity, they'll chase me for closure. And too often, it works. Because you care. Because you were raised to believe that love requires repair, conversation, connection. But narcissists exploit that belief. They reward your vulnerability with silence, your truth with dismissal, your pain with absence. And if you're not careful, you'll start to think that you're the one who's broken. This is not emotional maturity. It's psychological cowardice. Let's be brutally honest. Emotionally mature people lean into hard conversations. They feel guilt. They reflect. They repair. But narcissists, they vanish. They freeze. They go emotionally limp. Like a puppet with its strings cut, not because they're overwhelmed, but because they know silence keeps them in control. And that's not maturity. That's emotional avoidance, wearing the mask of strength. How this distance damages you. Let's name what this really does to your psyche. You start doubting your emotions. You stop trusting your instincts. You learn to anticipate punishment for speaking up. You confuse emotional starvation with space. And the worst part, you begin to think that if you just behave better, softer, quieter, less reactive, maybe they'll stop disappearing. That's not love. That's survival mode. That's emotional trauma masquerading as loyalty. Emotional intelligence means naming the game. This is where your power begins. You must stop interpreting their silence as some deep, spiritual need for distance, and instead see it for what it is: a calculated, manipulative move designed to make you question your worth. And the moment you call it out, even if only in your own mind, you shatter the illusion. Because now, you're not confused. You're clear. You're no longer in a fog. You're standing in the light of emotional intelligence and psychological resilience. Don't match their distance, transcend it. The Stoics taught us, you don't have to attend every battle you're invited to. So don't meet their silence with silence born of resentment. Meet it with clarity, with calm, with a shift in focus. From why are they doing this to me, to why am I allowing this to define my emotional reality. They may disappear, but your sense of self does not have to go with them. When they pull away, you return, but not to them. You return to yourself, to your values, to your truth, to your inner peace. You stop chasing validation from someone who uses your longing as leverage. You stop proving your worth to someone who's too emotionally stunted to see it. Because silence is not always absence. Sometimes it's a mirror, and if you look closely, it reflects them, not you. What true emotional power looks like power is not in being loud. It's not in disappearing. Real power, the kind that lasts, is in presence, in being emotionally available. Even when things get hard, in having the courage to stay connected without control. Narcissists mistake withdrawal for superiority, but you don't have to. You can walk away not to punish, but to preserve. You can disengage not to manipulate, but to protect. That's the difference between them and you. How to break their emotional hold. 1. Notice the silence without needing to solve it. Don't fill in their absence with your own insecurity. 2. Stop over-explaining yourself. The moment you start explaining your pain to someone who ignores it, you hand them power. 3. Build emotional self-sufficiency. If your peace depends on their presence, you will always be enslaved by their absence. 4. Respond with stillness, not reaction. Their distance is bait. Don't bite. Watch. Learn. Disengage with grace. Closing this chapter. They thought you'd chase. They thought you'd beg. They thought you'd break. But you've changed. You've learned that emotional distance is a tactic, not a truth. That someone who uses silence to punish is not safe to love. You've remembered that your self-worth is not on trial. Not anymore. So the next time their silence echoes, don't hear pain. Hear freedom. Because what they withhold says more about them than it ever will about you. Closure isn't something they give. It's something you choose. There's a final illusion that keeps you stuck, not their words, not their silence, but your hope. Not hope for healing, but hope that they will be the one to deliver it. That one day they'll wake up, realize what they've done, feel remorse, and finally give you the apology, the explanation, the reckoning you deserve. But let me be direct, that fantasy will drain your soul more than their silence ever could. Hope can be a form of emotional self-deception. Stoicism teaches us to see things as they are, not as we wish they were. And the truth is brutal. But freeing narcissists don't avoid closure because they're unaware. They avoid it because keeping you confused serves their control. They know the story is unfinished. They want it unfinished. They leave the door open just enough to keep you waiting, but never enough to let you walk through with dignity. Why? Because as long as you're waiting, you're not walking away. The real reason they'll never give you closure. They can't. Closure requires accountability. Accountability demands emotional courage. And narcissists are terrified of emotional courage. To offer closure, they'd have to say, yes, I hurt you. Yes, I abandoned you. Yes, I played with your mind to protect my own ego. But if they said that, the whole mask falls. The illusion of superiority collapses, The house of cards they built to feel powerful disintegrates, so instead of facing themselves, they let you carry the burden of unfinished stories. They ghost. They pretend nothing happened. They twist the narrative until you doubt your own sanity, and then they stay silent. That's not avoidance. That's strategy. Stop asking why they left without explaining. You already have the answer. They didn't leave because you were too much. They left because your truth was too confronting. You didn't scare them. Your clarity did. Your boundaries did. Your unwillingness to be manipulated anymore that terrified them. Because deep down, narcissists know the moment you stop seeking their closure, they lose their last piece of control. Closure is not a door they close. It's one you lock. Let's redefine closure. It's not a conversation. It's not an apology. It's not a satisfying ending. Closure is clarity, not about them, but about you. It's when you say, I don't need you to validate my pain. I don't need your permission to move forward. Your silence no longer defines my worth. I won't keep bleeding just because you refuse to acknowledge the cut. That is closure. And you don't wait for it, you take it. Emotional intelligence means giving yourself the ending they never will. They left you with questions. Answer them yourself. They left without explanation. Make your own meaning. They disappeared when you needed truth. Give yourself honesty now. That's what emotional intelligence looks like. Not waiting, not hoping, but choosing self-respect over unfinished stories. The trap of maybe one day. Maybe one day they'll come back. Maybe one day they'll understand. Maybe one day they'll feel sorry. No. Maybe one day you'll stop waiting. Because every day you rehearse that hope, you push your healing another mile down.